South Africa is a country of many contradictions. It has an ugly history, and yet each of the 9 provinces has some of the most beautiful landscapes you will ever behold. It is also currently one of the most dangerous countries to live in, with crime statistics that are so high they almost feel fabricated. The divide between rich and poor is forever growing, and with 45% of the nation going to bed hungry every night and the country playing host to many refugees from other third world countries, crime is an everyday reality. Since crime is such a huge problem, those who can afford it live in secured neighborhoods. It's a luxury only the extremely wealthy can afford, and the Van Breda family from Stellenbosch near Cape Town definitely could afford it. Martin van Breda was a man with a vision, and with foresight and hard work, he managed to acquire millions of rands by building private schools and investing in tracking devices to find stolen vehicles. Amongst his peers, he was a business visionary. The Van Breda family was a close-knit group. Their mom, Teresa, was supportive of her husband and children. The children were the brothers, Rudy, 22, Henri, who was 20, and sister, Marley, who was 16, wanted for nothing. It was during the children's middle school years that the family decided that, like many other South Africans who could afford it, they should leave the country. They settled in Perth and for the next 8 years enjoyed all Australia could offer. The kids had private school education, and after 8 years of being there, Rudy had already achieved his master's degree in engineering, and Henri was enrolled at the Melbourne Trinity College. The pull to return home was too strong, and eventually during 2014, Martin decided that he, Teresa and Marley would return to South Africa. Martin spent millions on a property in the exclusive De Zoels Golf Estate in Stellenbosch. This is undoubtedly one of the most breathtakingly beautiful areas of the country. The property was chosen because the security was excellent. Guards would patrol the estate 24 hours a day, and thermal sensors would monitor all movement. CCTV cameras were mounted everywhere, and the property was surrounded with a massive high-voltage electric fence topped off with razor wire. On the morning of the 27th of January, 2015, emergency services received a call from 10 Goski Street in the estate. The caller was Henry van Breda, and according to him, his family had been attacked by an axe-wielding maniac. The emergency call is truly one of the most bizarre calls of this kind I've ever heard. Henri was so calm, it sounds as if he is ordering pizza. At one point, it actually sounds as if he is giggling. The call is made at about 7 a.m., despite the fact that the attack occurred several hours before, and the entire conversation of about 25 minutes revolves around finding out his physical address. According to Henry, the family had a normal Wednesday evening. Both sons were in South Africa for a visit, and the family relaxed in their luxurious home. The night was balmy, and after supper, they watched some television and eventually each retired to their rooms. Henri and Rudy shared a room, and according to Henri, just after 3 a.m., he was the last person awake in the house. He needed to go to the toilet and decided to take his cell phone with him. While on the throne, he heard movement in the room he shared with his brother and slowly moved towards the door. He stated that he saw a black-clad man with a ski mask standing over the sleeping Rudy. Suddenly the man rose with the axe, ironically the same axe that they kept in the pantry, of all places, and then the man started hacking at Rudy's head. Thankfully, the young man never saw it coming. Henry stated he was frozen in fear and that he must have shouted because his father entered the room and tried to tackle the intruder, but the man turned on him and killed him in the same manner he killed his eldest son. He then turned to Teresa and Marley, who had woken from the noise, and attacked both, hacking repeatedly at both until they no longer moved. According to Henry, the attacker was laughing like a madman all the while he was murdering his family. The intruder then turned to Henry, threw away his trusty axe and attacked Henry with a kitchen knife. The two got into a scuffle and Henry received a few flesh wounds and a couple of bruises, but for some odd reason, the attacker fled at that time. Henry apparently chased after him, but decided to turn around. He stated that halfway up the stairs to where his family lay slain, he fainted and blacked out, only to regain consciousness hours later. When he woke, he did not first call emergency services. Instead, while chain smoking, he repeatedly made calls to his then 16-year-old girlfriend. When emergency personnel arrived, they found Henry outside in his socks and blood-spattered sleeping shorts. No other blood on his body was visible, and police forensics would later determine that he took a shower after the attack. During the call, he mentioned that Marley was moving her leg, but EMTs presumed since her jugular had been damaged and her injuries were so severe, she was dead. She surprised everyone by fighting for her life with all she had, and it's a miracle that she survived at all. It would later be determined that she had no memory of the previous evening or the attack itself, which is a blessing in disguise. Teresa, Rudy, and Martin were not so lucky, and all three were pronounced dead at the scene. The luxury home had been turned into a slaughterhouse as blood stained the stairs, the floor, and the walls. To seasoned investigators, this looked like a frenzied attack, filled with personal rage. As Henry was treated for his injuries, he was as cool as a cucumber, salted with a slight demeaning bit of arrogance. Towards emergency staff he was irritable and rude, until he heard his sister was still alive. He then became a little more complacent. A doctor would later testify during his trial that the wounds he suffered all seem too parallel and all seem obviously self-inflicted. After he was released from hospital, he went to stay with his aunt and uncle. That was until March, when Marley was released into their custody, and since Henry at that point was deemed the main suspect in the murders, the two were prohibited to have any contact. The South African judicial and police services fail its citizens on a daily basis, but with this case, police knew that every piece of evidence was important and that they had only one chance to bring their main suspect successfully to trial. It took almost 18 months before all the evidence in the case against Henry van Breda was finally ironclad. While police were gathering evidence and building a case, Henry was released on 100,000 rands bail, which translated to about $7,000. While on bail, he went to chef school and even managed to fall in love, despite the most traumatic event anyone could ever survive. As a matter of fact, Danielle Jantz van Rensburg was completely oblivious to the notoriety of her boyfriend until she stumbled upon an article about the murders. Still, love must be blind, because Danielle still proclaims her undying love for the man accused of killing 3 members of his family. Once authorities felt that they had an airtight case, a warrant for Henry's arrest was issued, and he surrendered to police voluntarily. Despite the expensive defense his family's money could afford him, the state prosecution disputed every aspect of his defense. He was asked to show members of the court how he defended himself during the attack, and the scene he acted out seemed way too rehearsed and precise to be real. During cross-examination, he often stumbled over answers and was suddenly convinced there were 2 intruders and not 1. Video footage showed clearly that no person or people were present near or around the Van Breda house during the time Henry claimed intruders entered. None of the valuables were taken, and considering this was an incredibly wealthy family, the loot would have contained a treasure trove of sellable goods. He clearly made no attempt to assist any of the members of his family with CPR, despite the fact that he tells the emergency operator that his sister is still moving. A neighbor testified that she heard shouting, as if members of the family were in an argument, and EMTs would testify that Henry smelt of alcohol. The call he made to the emergency service operator was also suspicious enough to mention. The prosecution put forth the scenario that, during the course of the evening, an argument had broken out. Henry was without a doubt the black sheep of the family, and it would emerge he was not planning to go back to Australia to complete his studies. He also had a great envy towards his brother, who was successful in his entire endeavors. It seemed that Henry also had a drug problem. According to the prosecution, Henry and Rudy had gotten into an argument. After the household had retired for the day, Henry waited until everyone was asleep, then retrieved the axe and attacked his brother in his sleep. His father, believing Henry's anger is just towards Rudy, tried to cover his son's body with his own, but Henry had no intent of leaving anyone alive. After killing his father and his brother, he turned his attention to his mother and his sister, who had entered the landing to inquire about the noise, and without mercy, he hacked at the woman who gave birth to him and his baby sister until he was convinced they were dead. Not once during his trial did he even pretend remorse or even sadness at the loss of his family. Of all the images of Henry van Breda, the one of him standing in the dock as he is delivered his sentence is the most haunting. His face is a shadow cast in stone, and his eyes betray the soul of the cold-blooded killer that he is. After 67 days on trial, he was found guilty on 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder and 1 count of trying to defeat the ends of justice. For the murder charges, he received life sentences, for which he will be eligible for parole in 25 years. For the attempted murder charge he received 15 years, and for obstructing justice, he received 12 months. All these sentences will run concurrently, and Henry van Breda will be eligible for parole before he is 50. He made 3 futile attempts at appeal, but each time his appeal was rejected. Marley van Breda never attended the trial of her brother. Thankfully, her family had been able to protect her from the public's curiosity, and we can only hope she never recalls the nightmarish events that unfolded that summer's night. Henry's family still supports him behind bars, and the baffling lack of definite motive fuels their belief that their nephew is innocent. Envy towards Rudy and the millions he would inherit from the family's estate seemed the most likely, but until Henry admits the role he played in the murder of his family, no one will know for sure. Thank you for watching yet another episode of my Shades of Evil video blog. Please comment, like, share, and/or subscribe to get notifications of future stories.